Hello, Patrick here, A Questions With, and welcome to the show. It is Tuesday. It's the first show of the week. It is cloudy outside. You're outside. I'm looking outside. It's now dark, and we are supposed to get some rain on and off today. So tonight. So we'll see what happens. Of course, you're here for the show, and I'm glad you are. Tonight we will be talking to a wow. What can I say? I mean, it, it blows my mind with uh, who I'm talking with tonight. It's a multi-talented artist, painter, photographer, writer. Um, I could go on, and I'll be talking about her uh, when she gets here. Um, the achievements that she has achieved in her life is amazing. I wish I had done at least a hundredth of what she's done. But our guest tonight will be artist, painter, Maureen Dowdy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm gonna have to see. I'm going with Dowdy because that's just what I'm going with. Um, Maureen is a Canadian-based painter. That's where she's was born and raised at. But she's so much more than just that. Some of the accomplishments that she has done include getting a degree in anthropology. Um, she has won several awards for her work. Um, as far as her painting goes, she holds degrees. She holds degrees in anthropology and film studies from Western Ontario University. She got her master's in cultural anthropology from Carleton University. Uh, uh, and she also was an elite athlete in Canada, and so much so that she ended up being in her school's Hall of Fame inductee. Uh, she has also dealt with cancer. She got cancer in 2017, and as far as I know, it probably came over there, saw who it was messing with, and just retreated because it's like, you know what? But we'll talk about that as well, because that's a subject near to my heart. Uh, and she after she got her diagnosis, she she got motivated, inspired, awakened the artist in her, the painter in her, and so that's what she's been doing. Um, it's amazing. She's an abstract artist, and I had to go back. I had to be honest with you. I had to go and read up on the subject because like I had mentioned, before, painting, art is like the most subjective medium out there. It just is. I mean, what one person sees is not what another person sees. It is very, very different. It's what. Hey, look who's here. We got a celebrity in the house. Our good friend Echo Zero in the house. All right. I'm glad you're here, Echo. That's cool, man. I didn't know you're into art. That's amazing. Yeah, you're gonna be blown away by our guest tonight. So Maureen Dowdy will be here. She'll be here in about 15 minutes or so. What's up? I saw you mentioned you were gonna paint your mask. I was sort of bummed by that because you actually looked really cool with that. But you look like I said, you look like a member of the Royal Flush Gang from the Superman comics. It was very cool look. Okay. So we're gonna talk to Maureen here about, like I said, about 15 minutes. Um, I I really do hope that some folks come out here and if you have a single creative bone in your body, or you appreciate art in any way, today's the show to show up for. Um, wow. I was, the more I read about Maureen, the more I'm like, holy crow, did I bite something, did I bite off more than I could chew? Only because she's just so accomplished. But paint, like I said, art is a medium where honestly, it's just it really is. Like I said before, and I mean, of course, I'm saying this. I watched Maureen come in there and say, "Yeah, that's not so true." But I do believe that, though. I do believe that what we see in art is subjective. But I'm also fascinated in how it's created. I saw a clip of Maureen and how she created her abstract art. Uh, oh, okay. You got four masks to the set. I might get the other three and a bonus one I will paint. Well, you know what? If you want to learn about painting, you definitely came to the right show tonight. That's for sure. That's for sure. Oh my gosh. Well, oh my heavens. Um, I do hope that she'll will probably show off a couple pieces of her work. Um, I'm so glad. I tell you one thing, I'm really glad I didn't do. I'm sort of glad I didn't ask her to demonstrate while she was talking, because I don't think that would have been possible. Because of her style is so all encompassing of being in the moment. That's where she's at. She's painting. That's where she's at. She's nowhere else but right there. And I think it would have been sort of insulting to sit there and say, "Yeah, could you draw a little something?" It's not nearly as easy as that. Not to take off any other artists I've had that have done art here, by far, because like I said, art is totally different on so many different levels. But for her type of work, uh, she would need to just basically, which is the question I'm going to ask too. It's like, it's a. I'm wondering if she has to work by herself. Well, it'll be interesting to see about that as well. Um, so I will break off the calendar here because that's what you guys expect. That's what you'll get. Those who can share us out, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so it's a busy week here on the channel. Uh, we have Maureen tonight, and then tomorrow night we have the Bud Files will be here, the Bud family. They'll be here tomorrow night talking about their channel and talking about their adventures up in the Badlands. Uh, on the 13th, we have Heroic Waffles. That's right. Waffles is returning to Eight Questions with. Um, and he'll catch us up to date on what's going on in the world of boutique collecting. Um, on the 16th, we are on the Midnight Society. We are wrapping up our John Wick trilogy uh, with John Wick 3 Parabellum. Uh, and we'll be joined by Betty J. Gathers and our good friend Anthony from Fever Dreamland Theater and the Cinema Squad. They'll be here at 8 o'clock on the 16th. On the 18th, we welcome in Ken and Ashley Sledge for Sledgehammer Horror. That's right. We got some heavy hitters coming in to come on and talk about their channel. Kenneth and Ashley are they're just one of the most dynamic creative teams in our community, and so we talking about how they got their start on their tube, and I really enjoy their series that they started. Where Ken and Ashley they ask various people about their very first horror movie that they've ever watched and what their impressions were about it. So they have done over 330. They've asked over 330 people. Man, I thought I was doing it. I thought I was tearing it up with 189. But those guys are just amazing. And we're going to be talking a little bit about their channel, their lives, how they met, all that good stuff, because they're really fun people, and they're also from Michigan too. How about that? And then on the 19th, we have director Michael LaCastri, who is a writer, director, and actor. His new movie the movie we'll be talking about at the Best Laid Plans, is out on Tubi, and we will be talking to him about that. I watched the movie. It's very funny. I really enjoyed it. It's pretty snappy, and well done. And I think we'll have a lot of fun with Michael. He'll be here talking about his career on the 19th, and then on the 20th we have rocker Constance Steele will be here. She's a rock and roller. She's also does some movies as well, some erotic thrillers, erotic horror thrillers, and so she'll be here on the 20th. The 23rd of the Midnight Society, we'll see the return of the Bat, as him and I are. We'll be talking about Terrifier. I'm sure he'll have already seen Terrifier 2 by the time we get here. But we're going to be talking all things Terrifier. And then on the 24th, I had to move this around a little bit. We have novelist Ted Morgan will be here with us. Novelist Ted Morgan will be here with us, and he has written something I think is rather unique. He has written a Christian action adventure book called The Restore. So if you're a fan of like Clive Cussler or John Sanford or Preston and Child, those James Patterson. James Patterson. Well, you want to come and watch me talk to Ted Morgan. He's going to talk to us about his process, where he came up with an idea, and is it possible for a Christian to write an action adventure book? We're going to talk to Ted and ask him. And then on the 25th, we have photographer, tremendous photographer, professional photographer, Justin Robert Sanders will be here on the 25th of October. I don't have anything yet on the 26th or 27th, so I might be doing a roundtable on the 27th. Might be dark on the 26th, but I'll probably do a roundtable on the 27th. Hey, Cass, how are you? Glad you're here. Our guest will be here momentarily. If you're into art as much as I am, that's one of the things. It's one of the things I really. That's one of the things I really enjoyed. Me and Maureen, we really enjoyed that. We went to many galleries, many shows. We saw the Da Vinci. They had a tour of Da Vinci. They had a Van Gogh exhibit. We've been to. We've been to art museums here in Detroit, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Toledo, and where else have we been to? I've been to art galleries in California, in Florida, and Alabama. So I do like going to museums and galleries. Yeah, that's a good thing. See, love is a good thing. You love art, yep, that's awesome, yep, and you love crafts, yep, and you love your reading, yep. Yes, that's a very good thing to have. Have the have a lot of have a lot of create love the creativity. No, that's no problem. That's no problem. Tablets are not perfect, right? That's for sure. Um, so have has I'm going to ask this even though there's only three people here. Hey, Mayhem. All right. Uh, we are talking with artist Maureen Doody tonight. She'll be here momentarily. If you are into art of any kind, if you have ever found yourself painting or drawing or going to a gallery, then this is the show for you. If you ever found yourself doodling on a piece of paper, this is the show for you. But of course, Maureen is a world-class artist, a many-time award-winning artist. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun for me. This is going to be a challenge to make sure I ask some good questions. I will admit I did have to go in there and read up about this about abstract painting. That is a very difficult concept for me. Uh, you're reading reports, Michelle. Yeah, we'll be doing a voice of the next Transformer movie. Okay, well, I guess that's a perfect segue. Oh, hey, Mark the Shark in the house. Well, that'll be that's a segue, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest onto the show. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. And here we go. Maureen Doody. Is it Doody?
It is
Okay,
duty. Yeah,
I wasn't quite sure.
it's a common mispronunciation. Yeah.
I wanted to err on the side of caution because I wasn't sure if it was that. So I just like, you know what? Because I've been that's has happened to me before where I've thought I've gotten the name right, and so I'm not, I'll say it how it's pronounced, and they're like, no, no, it's pronounced this way, and then I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. So a lot of the times I just wait till the artist, the guest gets here, and I
Yeah,
say, how badly
absolutely.
did I spell your name? I'm glad you're here.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
I think I'm thrilled that you're here. I am completely blown away when I was reading up about you. After I asked you and you graciously agreed to come on, I've been reading about you, and the more I've read, the more I've watched, the more like I'm like I better be on my A game because this is a serious talented artist here. This
Oh,
is
thank you very much. That's very lovely of you to say. Thank you.
Oh wow, I don't even, honestly, I'll be, can you see the chat? Okay.
Um, Not really. No, unfortunately.
Okay.
We were a little puzzled about how to use this app, and so I'm not sure. Um, I
Because I
see
can read
that
off.
I see you and the subtitles, but I'm not seeing the chat. I could actually, one second, let me see. I don't see anything in there, but I do have access now. I can see the chat.
Okay. Because I'm gonna go ahead and I'll catch up with us as we talk.
Sure.
And yeah, everybody's saying hello. Mark is saying aloha. Let's see. Our friend Cassie says she can't wait to do an interview with me.
Oh,
Wow. Okay. Well, that'd be nice.
yeah.
Okay. Uh, I'm me and the cheetah we're always game. Um, so wow, where do I even begin? Well, I guess I'll begin at the beginning. This was not by accident. This is you've had this part of your lineage. Your father was a very accomplished artist.
He was. My father was a very accomplished ceramicist, actually. And so definitely grew up seeing my father working with art. He did painting, oil painting as well, but his true passion lay with ceramics. And so, since I can remember just going to ceramic shops and looking at paints and watching him, he'd be in the basement and meticulously painting, the tiniest details for hours on end. And so that was always a part of what I knew growing up, definitely.
Now, where were you born and raised at? I mean, what city were you born in? Was
So
it
I was
Ottawa?
actually, so my dad was in the military. So we did move around a lot when I was very, very young. But so I was born in Trenton, where the military base was. But I was very fortunate when we moved to Ottawa when I turned 6, and we stayed here. And so I would call Ottawa my home.
Uh, So, I mean, you got your start early, early, early. I mean, you must have, because your father was a painter, and so you were exposed to art when you were just coming out of your diapers, basically.
Yeah,
What?
absolutely. And I think, arts writ large because my family's from Newfoundland. And so part of our culture is singing and dancing and storytelling. And so I grew up, with singing and dancing in the kitchen and listening to all of those old traditional songs. And so it wasn't just sort of like the visual art in terms of painting and ceramics, but also the singing, the dancing, and the tradition of storytelling about, our ancestors and Newfoundland in general. So I had all aspects of art and creativity, which I was very fortunate.
Now, how old were you when you got your first brush?
Oh my goodness. It's funny. Probably not until my 20s, because even though art was always a part of my life, I sort of had two components to my life. And, I was an athlete, and I was also had that creative side. And I've kind of always, like, I look back and I think, why did I pursue sort of the athletics maybe further earlier in my life? And I always think that maybe with the athletics, it was, uh, athletics, you don't really have to show your vulnerability. It's about, hiding your weaknesses, and
Right.
art in the creative process is about exposing. It's that inner exposure. And so I think I just felt more comfortable not exposing that. And so I pursued athletics. And so I always would go back and dabble, but athletics took up the majority of my time. And it wasn't until really a cancer diagnosis in 2017 where my life kind of switched, and I had retired from athletics by then. And that's kind of where I channeled all of my energy, was in the art at that point.
Our good friend Waffles is here. He's saying he's a fan of yours. I mean, I know Michael. I'm sure he will have some questions later on. Uh, he's sure he visited your website as I did, and I sat there for like a long time. I did. I'll be honest with you. I sat there and I looked at your painting like if I was at a gallery, and I like to sit and I like to look and complicate. Com- uh, oh boy.
Absolutely. And no, I have to say, I've been very fortunate in my life that I've been able to pursue multiple vocations, and they've overlapped at various times in my life, and still do today. So it's I've definitely dabbled in a lot of things. And so I don't know, sometimes that's maybe to my my detriment, but I'm interested in so many different things. And so I can't help it. It's kind of what keeps me going, and that purpose in life. So
See, Waffles has mentioned too that he was also an army brat as well.
excellent.
He,
There's a lot of us out there.
he was also in the army. He lived in Germany, Louisiana, Italy, New Jersey, and California.
Wow,
So I mean, so
amazing.
yeah, there's. I guess that's part of it. With part of being in the military, you got you got exposed to different cultures and different types of people as you were growing up. I mean, that's one great thing about
Yeah,
about the military.
absolutely. And I think sort of coupled with being from Newfoundland and then having the military background, um, I definitely, got that sense from my mom in particular, because my dad would be away and she would be alone there's four girls in my family. Um, that sense of community, and they really take care of each other because they understand how hard it is. And I there's a funny story that my mom always tells, that when she was pregnant with me and we were in Trenton, she had three other kids under the six and under kind of thing. And that we had just moved to Trenton. My dad was stuck up in Alert. He couldn't get home. She thought she was going into labor. So she went next door and she knocked on the door and she said, I have a friend in Ottawa that I know and a doctor. I'm going to drive there. Can you watch my children? And so she drove herself in labor, false alarm, came back. But, like, those are the types of things that military wives did at those times. So
A lot of people a lot of people are coming in here and watched you and looked at your art. Our friend Cruz is in here and love your art. I am totally I'm so happy that people have actually you know because I've mentioned before about art. Art is really. And do you think this is true? Is it the most subjective medium out there?
wow.
Mm,
I
mm,
think it is. I mean, I think we see art, I think, everywhere in our lives, and we interpret it in very different ways. And it's very emotionally based and personal story based. And so I guess the challenge that I like, and in terms of expressing through art, is being able to take my interpretation, and through composition and color and the canvas, sort of provide that framework for people to interpret themselves, engage, maybe learn more about themselves. So most definitely, I think it is. And that's what I think is so fantastic about it, because everybody can take a piece that has meaning for them away with them and interpret it in their own way.
Yeah, that's a really good way of you certainly said it the way I'd like to express it, because that's how I looked at it too. It's like, you go inside of a gallery or you go watch, sometimes you even watch someone at work if they're gracious enough to let you. And then you watch them and you watch how they work and how they express themselves on the canvas. But it's so strange. It's like you could put it up and then you can have 10 people, and then 10 people are going to give you 10 different opinions. And I just
Yeah,
found more than not that art is actually truly the most subjective of all mediums. I mean,
it is.
everybody
And
can read it. Yeah.
SARS is, and it's it's hard because it's very vulnerable. You have to be let yourself be very vulnerable, and that's very hard to do. And I think that's what's so wonderful about the art community is that um, everybody has to start with that level of authenticity. You just have to. It's really the only way that you can actually, put those messages and expressions onto canvas. So right away, everybody's sort of at the same level. And I think that's what's so wonderful and about that is that there's a common community with artists and in the art community of that we're all starting at a place of vulnerability.
But you get it. You didn't start off with paint. You actually were a world-class athlete in Canada. You represented your country in various competitions. Now, how did you was art first for you, as far as you were aware of what art was because of your dad, and then maybe you weren't you wanted to express yourself a different way, so you turned to athletics. Uh, if that's what you're exposed to, and you got into that. Did you is that how it went for you, or did you always have at least a finger into the art?
I think I always had a finger in the art. Like I think they were always competing. I ran my first race when I was 3 on the military base. I like it was the athletics was always there, and I loved it. But there was always the art side, and I think though with the art, um, because of that level of you have to put ego aside and that level of vulnerability and maybe showing the weaknesses. I don't think I was ever really ready to be able to do that. And so I sort of kept the art side hidden. And I love to sing. I dreamt of being an actor. And anytime I had any time alone, I was singing and I was setting up these elaborate sets in my house, and I would act out these scenes, but it was a secret, I guess, passion. And I would do things here and there, like I would sing in talent shows and sing with my mom and at weddings and things like that. But it was always something I just never felt comfortable with, and I don't know why. That's the only sort of how I justify it, is I just maybe wasn't ready to be that vulnerable. But it's bizarre because I could compete in front of thousands of people and, whatever happened there was okay. But the art side was always a little bit difficult. And I think it took cancer, unfortunately, where, you're completely ripped bare of everything, and that vulnerability, you're left with nothing but the vulnerable. And I think it was then, where it became part of my healing and my way of expressing myself for emotions that I really couldn't articulate verbally. And so I think that's kind of where it sort of came full circle for me.
Speaking of the cancer, I mean, was that are you in remission now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a word. Like it's funny, with cancer, we don't really get, well, at least with my doctors, we don't really have that, the remission. But yes, I'm definitely cancer free and have been now. I'm at 5 years, so a big anniversary this fall. But yeah, like it's interesting because you sort of you're in cancer world and you go through it, and it's just about surviving, and then you finish, and then you're on your own, and you're it's just you're in programs and you do your checkups here and there, but you're really left to navigate sort of what that means and what life means moving forward. So it's been very challenging but also very rewarding.
Yeah, yeah. I can agree with that. Yeah, cancer and me, we're old friends.
Uh,
So,
yeah, unfortunately, that there's you can't turn your head without running into somebody or knowing somebody who has had cancer. It's awful. It's so awful when it comes into your house, and you can't really, people don't really understand until it actually comes into your home, and yeah, it is what it is in that sense for sure.
now, when you go back when you were starting out with your athletes, when you were doing your athletics. Now, who encouraged you to do that? Was that something that you did on your own, or was that something your mom encouraged you to do?
I don't think like my parents, my mom was my number one fan. She sacrificed sleep, food, lived in a car to take me anywhere and everywhere when it came to sports. But she never pressured me into sports. I think I definitely recognized and always had a very hard work ethic and competitive spirit, probably from a very young age. I just had that, and that probably came down from my parents. But um, I would just spend hours in the driveway just shooting hoops, and no, my mom wasn't saying I had to do that. I just did it. I had that inner drive for as long as I can remember.
Now, you went to University of Western Ontario. Now,
Yeah.
did you go on a scholarship?
So, well, they didn't have, unfortunately, athletic scholarships at that time, but I started off at the University of Western Ontario playing basketball. And then I got to a point where I was ready to switch over. And so then I actually finished my athletic career running track and field for the University of Western Ontario. And then when I graduated, I continued on to Carleton University to do my master's, and I had a couple of years eligibility, so I went back to playing basketball because they didn't have a track team. So I kind of bounced back and forth between the two sports. But it was only when I was done university that I finally made the decision to pursue track and field full time.
And you got your degree in anthropology.
I
Um,
Yeah.
now, what is cultural anthropology?
Well, anthropology, is sort of the study of humans, and there's many different disciplines within that within anthropology. And so, cultural anthropology is essentially just studying different societies and different cultures and what we can learn, what we need to unlearn. And the thing I loved about anthropology, when I was taking it, I was dabbling in all of the different parts of anthropology, but I just loved the variety. And it taught critical thinking, and so it appealed to me on that level because it was the study of the human race, and it was all encompassing, which I really really enjoyed.
Now, what are some of the things that when you were studying that and bringing it forward to today? What are some of the things you noticed when you first started it? I mean, what brought you to that field? Because that's not exactly I don't know. That seems to be a very difficult field, to study human beings, especially in the contemporary sense. Most of the time we think of anthropology, we're thinking of someone out there in the mountains, digging up dinosaur bones.
Well, that's a part of it, yeah. So it was, I think it was just, I was just interested in so many things. I love, essay writing. I love the math. I love the biology. And anthropology, you can touch upon all of those things. And so I really, really loved that part of it, and just learning about, different cultures and people, and seeing everything from a very critical lens where, we've been taught a certain way of how a people might be or a society might be, and realizing that, that really isn't the way it is, maybe only on the surface, but there's all of these deeper levels that we haven't even seen, that are quite dynamic. And so being able to study that was just fascinating.
What did you and as far as the culture anthropology, what are some of the things that really surprised you about contemporary humans?
Hmm.
Have we really are we stagnant?
Have we evolved? I feel like we've taken a bit of a step back, to be honest.
Mhm.
I don't know. The past couple of years have been, I feel like the world is very broken. Um, and I still feel like there's so much more to learn. One of the things that stood out for me when I was doing graduate work at that time was when we're talking about truth and reconciliation today and learning about residential school system. And I can remember being in grad class and having a student in the class, and we were learning about colonialism and she had come from the residential school system. And amazingly, I had been in anthropology for I don't know how many years, and I really didn't know much about it, which is shocking. And she had so much grief and anger, and seeing that firsthand was just um, unbelievable. And I can remember my professor sort of holding her hand just to get through the class, and us sitting there and not even really understanding and that, you know, that compassion and not even realizing that this part of our history had existed. And this was present day. This was in the 1990s. So um, you know, seeing that come full circle now is it just brings all of that home again.
Now you're talking about the schools where they found the young kids were buried, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Uh, now you mentioned that happened in the 90s. That was just recent. I thought
Well, the residential school systems were still happening in the early 90s. Yes.
the bodies
Some
themselves
still some in existence.
okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Uh, what was the colonial school or the school system? What what was it? How did it take place in your country, in Canada?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I could provide the details on that specifically. But it was definitely you know, at that sort of the experience for Indigenous peoples was, you know, those children were taken from their homes and put in those schools to basically erase their culture. And you know, no communication with their homes or their family or anything like that. And so and the trauma on so many levels that they experienced as a result of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we're not going to have the bodies per se, but we are going through that here in the United States. We're having the same thing happen here, but and it isn't just indigenous people; it's everybody. We're having that taken away. It seems like it's as our history and our culture are being taken away. Teachers are now being told they could be arrested for teaching about the Civil War and slavery in America. They actually truly are being threatened with that. So it's
Yeah.
amazing to me. That's,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out, you know, in our further studies in universities and sort of, you know, where that goes in the future. Yeah, it's crazy.
so I'll rotate something a little bit more fun. Now you were competing on a very high level, very high. Did you ever go out for the Olympics?
Yeah, so I had definitely done the Olympic trials. Sadly, though, the way it works in Canada, is that even though you've made standard for the Olympics to qualify for the Olympics, because every event has a certain distance or speed or time that you have to achieve numerous times throughout the year. When you go to the Olympic trials, which is essentially the Canadian Championships, you have to place top three. And at that championships, that trials, I actually faulted out of the competition, so I had disqualified myself.
Oh, the pressure must have been immense, though.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because the pressure, I didn't feel like I felt it at the time. I think I just had so much adrenaline. This track was really fast. And interestingly enough, you know, I didn't at that time. So if you go back to sort of that era of when I was training for track and field, we didn't have a facility. I'm in Ottawa. We didn't have a track and field facility for indoors, right? So we're indoors 9 months of the year because of the weather. And so if I wanted to practice long jump or speed work, you know, we would sort of roll down these little strips of rubber and race on it and sort of hit a wall kind of thing. And so if I didn't have the opportunity to really work on my runway and my jumps until the snow melted in the spring and we could get out on the track at, you know, at Mooney's Bay. So I think it was just, you know, lack of repetition and fast track and lots of adrenaline. I jumped really, really well, but it was, you know, that little millimeter of my toe was over that fault line. So
Yeah, that sucks. You
It
know,
does. Oh,
you
there's
know,
no words. Yeah. And it's funny because, we focus on the Olympics, of course, every 4 years. We talk about those athletes that, sacrificed everything and made the team, or sacrificed everything and maybe injured. But there's hundreds, thousands of us who, sacrificed so much and were right on the cusp, and it just didn't happen. And, where you go from there and how you reconcile with that.
and how did you?
I turned to art at the time, which is kind of, interesting. When sort of my career was kind of winding down. At the same time, my husband Byron, he'll hopefully join us soon. He was getting into photography. He was really interested in photography, and I had bought him his first camera for Christmas one year. And I think just through taking pictures and conversation, he started to get asked to do weddings. And some friends, my sister had asked him to do weddings. And so then all of a sudden he was working, full time every weekend doing weddings. And so when I retired, he asked me, because I was kind of grieving, right? Like that, being an athlete and that identity, and what do I do now with all this hours and hours of time? Um, so he asked me, why don't you come and do a wedding with me? And at the time I was like, oh, I don't know, the same time I'm kind of enjoying just doing my own thing. But I went. And the first wedding that I did, we were at, so the groom's in one location, the bride's in the other. So we were at the bride's house, and Byron says, "Well, I got to go now and do the groom. So see you later." And he left me with the bride and the family, and I just had to figure it out. And I loved it. And I was able to channel again creativity into photography. And so that's kind of how that all came about.
Yeah, you're a very accomplished photographer, and you also write too.
Yes.
Now, was the writing something you did from the very when as a young age too?
Writing was always something that I did as well. I think it was part and parcel of the storytelling. So always writing. I can remember when I was really young, sending a poem off to, try to get it published, and doing all of those types of things. And then I guess writing was another level to the art process, where I just started writing, how I was feeling. And I was painting, and I had developed this painting, and I was writing. The poem I had written was underneath the paint, and I was and then I transitioned to paper, and I wrote this poem, and I submitted it to Wildfire magazine, which is a breast cancer magazine located in California. Has an amazing community, and it was accepted, and sort of just went through that process, and then just started writing, and just writing about personal experiences, and mainly nonfiction, short story. And so working on, in terms of the film aspect of things, working on screenplays and trying to get films made and that kind of thing. So it just all sort of grew from there.
Now, Canada is, as far as television and movies, it's a great place to be, isn't it? I
An
mean,
amazing place to be. There's so many wonderful initiatives right now, and Ottawa in particular is an amazing hub for movie making. Most of the Hallmark movies that you see on TV are made here in Ottawa. In the summertime, whenever it's 30 degrees and everyone's got the big coats on, pretending that it's snowing.
yeah, yeah. Now, have you done any acting, or have you done any screenplays?
I haven't. I'm working on a screenplay right now, but I haven't. I wouldn't say I've done any official acting. I've done background and segments and things like that. But yeah, no, it was kind of funny. I sort of, I guess, manifested my acting into Byron at the time, because when we were sort of going through the whole cancer thing, Byron at that time, his company, so he's an engineer, his company was bought out and the satellite office closed. So he was on leave, fortunately, when I was diagnosed with cancer, and became my primary caregiver at that time. But he was home, and I could see that, he was, like he was living my life in terms of, what was going on with me. And like, you need to go and get back to doing the things that you love. And anyone who knows Byron, and you will see in a few minutes, he lights up a room when he walks in. He's so unbelievably, he just makes people feel at ease, but his sense of humor is second to none. And he's always wanted to get into comedy. And so I said, there's a talent agency here in Ottawa. They're having an open call. Go down and just audition, see what happens. And he did. And, he signed a week later. And so I've been kind of sort of, channeling my acting now because I'm his reader for all of his auditions.
Oh,
So I get
right,
to play all
right.
these roles now, which is lots of fun, and be part of that creative process, of acting out those scenes. And so I kind of get my acting now through him.
Yeah, now you can both hone your you can hone your skills along with him.
Exactly. Yeah,
Um,
totally.
running lines is really important, and it's good to have a partner, that understands, the what as for the other actor, understands the process. You know,
Exactly.
go and grab somebody and say, hey, can you read this to me? Is a lot different from someone to sit there and say, I'll run lines with you, because they know they can get you to that place where you need to go. As far as the cancer goes, I mean, you mentioned Byron and living the life, living your life. Um, I think that's just the norm, though, for patients. I mean, and for families. I think they do live through. They have to. It's just it's really hard. It on paper, it sounds good to sit there and say, well, got to live your life and get on with. But in reality, it's a whole different animal.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a trauma, right? And it affects everybody in the family, from, children, extended family. And absolutely, and everybody deals with it differently. And so I think it was, the idea of getting into the acting was, again, just to channel sort of all of that energy, and doing something that, is a healing process, and sort of like an unburdening of all of that, anxiousness, or whatever you're feeling, anger, what have you, inside of you, and doing something positive with that, and also pursuing something that he's always loved to do. And what's really neat about sort of the creative process and producing things, in the arts, where it's either a painting or it's a part in a film, is you're able to touch other people, and you hear back, and it's, oh, that they were inspired, or it helped them through something, and that's where everything kind of clicks, and you're like, that's what it's all about. And that becomes, your true purpose, and what you are hoping to achieve every time you do something. And so it's very rewarding. And we've been kind of going with the flow, but it was a really funny time, because we sort of got through all of the cancer stuff, and then all of a sudden, I'm painting and Byron's acting. I'm sure people thought we were crazy at the time, but but
No,
we
not at
channeled
all.
through. So
I'm going to catch up with the chat. Looks like it's been flying, and this happens to me once in a while. Once in a while, I'll get guest locked, and I just get so interested in what you're saying that I got to go over there and pay attention to the chat. First of all, I got to say hello to Mariska. I have not seen you in years. Wow, so glad you are back. I'm sure that, sheesh, you know what, you should be on here. I'm glad you're back, Mariska. We'll have to catch up. See, I think we have our friend, a brother from a certain age. He has a question. He says, question for Maureen. Do you write your ideas down on paper or in your phone as soon as they pop in your head?
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good question for a
all
painter,
the
isn't it?
time I'm constantly screenshotting things, writing things, paper. I mean, it's all the time. I have 100 different books that I write in, and I'm searching through all the time, trying to find that idea that I wrote down, like, in that split second. But yes, absolutely. I I love to I love the research. I'm an academic at heart as well. I part of my life, and I love reading. I love learning new things. And I joke now, I say, with chemo brain, I'm not sure I'll retain everything, but I definitely love the research part of it, and learning. And so, writing down for me is a way of retaining that information. And no, it's a part of my process, 100%.
That's really a question I was going to ask you next. Is like an abstract art, an abstract painter. Is that a planned out? I mean, when you walk inside a room when you walk inside a room and you approach your canvas, do you actually have it mapped out in your head, or is it just however you feel?
I think
You-
a lot of it is feeling based. I definitely have, I think I come at it from a perspective or maybe a context where I'm thinking about something and there's something that might be bothering me or that I'm trying to express or I'm trying to figure out. And so that will always sort of be the framework within which I work. But in terms of, what happens then when I go to paint, a lot of it is just intuitive and you know, how I might be feeling at that moment. Um, but it really is, and I could come back and the next day to that same painting and look at it and, completely change everything. But I always come at it with a context or a framework in mind of what I'm trying to explore or convey.
let's see. People already want to have you on their panels. That's awesome. I like that. I like that. Let's see. Yeah, you can never learn too much. Yeah, the chemo brain that Maureen is talking about from the chemotherapy cancer patients take, and it does take a long time to recover from that. So that's Let's see. Yeah, she is so calm and collected. I do. Yeah. I think that's. I think that is part of the mentality you have to have as a painter, right? I mean, I know I've seen like people portray artists like a Jackson Pollock as being frenetic and sort of almost like schizophrenic in a sense. They throw paint on there and they just like all whirlish dervish. A lot of noise, but what does it signify?
Hmm.
Um, uh, I looked at a picture. I looked at a video of your painting, and what really struck me was how close you stand to your canvas. I mean, you're like nose, almost nose to nose with it.
Yes,
So you're not stepping back. You're right there and in the moment. And
definitely. Yes.
I really found that fascinating, Maureen, because I'm like, okay, because most of the time, whenever you think of someone doing painting, they're standing there with broad strokes, and then they're standing back there and looking at it, hem and haw, and then they're dashing it. But with you, it was very precise, very closed, and it almost seemed like intrusive even to watch it from the
Right.
outside.
Yeah. That's just how I prefer to work. But I have to admit that I do spend a lot of time staring at the painting from different angles. And I catch myself staring at it, and my kids and Byron will be like, "Mom, you're staring at your artwork again." But I do when I'm actually in the moment and I'm painting it. Yeah, it's an interesting observation. I've never had anyone say that to me before. But you're absolutely right. I do. I like that proximity when I'm in the process of painting.
Now, what is your process? I mean, do you set days aside where you know for sure you're going to paint, or is it just you set up your studio and then it's like whenever you get that feeling to paint?
A little bit of both. We have a very busy household and we're all doing a million different things, which is great. But we never know where we're going in a given day, and especially with Byron's schedule. So it's a little bit of both. There's definitely days and times in the day where I'm painting and it's my painting studio time. But a lot of it too is just, opportunity of when I have time to work, or if something, if I think of something I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to right away, I have to do something with that. But it's usually a process of, like I had said before, where something is brought to my attention that I'm trying to understand better or express or learn more about. And so that kind of instigates those types, like, starting a new series or a new painting.
Let's see. People are mentioning, yeah. uh, Mariska's commenting. I used the term schizophrenic, but that's a perfect term for it. If you ever watch some painters work, I mean, they really are frenetic. I mean, they are. They're never set. They never sing that. They never take the same step twice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Again, it's like it's totally subjective. It's like I mean, for some people they look at that and they think it's bold and daring, and for other people they'll look at it and go like, it's a mess. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Absolutely.
it's an not so much with the art being created, but the way the art is being created. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's not the end result. It's the doing that's schizophrenic. That can be interpreted as that. Um, let's see, we got another question for you. Well, we got a comment first. See, Maureen could be a teacher and a guide coach. Yep, I agree with that. Do you agree with that? Do you think do you see yourself being do you see yourself being a teacher or a guide or a coach, or you just want to do your thing?
No, I very much could see myself doing that. Absolutely. I think, for me, I'm really interested in sort of art as a conduit for other people to sort of discover their true, authentic self and their purpose. And I think everybody, there's a creative spirit in everybody. I truly believe that. And, in some it's just burning stronger than others. So I definitely, that's kind of my vocation when it comes to the art, is really about helping others if I can.
Let's see, and then we have another question for you. How long have you been into photography? So, how many years have you taken it
Oh, God.
seriously?
Yeah, so Byron and I first started the photography business, I want to say back in 2006. So we did wedding photography for, I want to say, probably close to 10 years. And it was an amazing experience. We traveled all over the place. We met amazing people. And, I can probably say with, confidence and some pride that we brought photography, a type of photography that was very non-traditional, to sort of the wedding um, genre that maybe hadn't been seen before. And so that was really exciting. And we were sort of like brought the couples. There was a few couples in Canada that were doing wedding photography, but I think we were like one of the first ones in Ottawa and in Ontario to be doing this kind of thing. So and then, we had to make a decision when kids came along. What did we want to do? Did we want to keep going like with the photography and branch out and do bigger things in terms of weddings? And we decided at that time that, I think we were both kind of done. Like we had done everything we felt we could do creatively with wedding photography. And so we branched out onto other things, but we're still very much involved. Byron still does a lot of headshots for the acting community, etc. We still do advertising and things like that. We just don't take as many projects anymore. But I did go back to photography last summer. I had, I guess it was one of those things where, part of, uh, healing from cancer, of course, you always have to be up and moving no matter how horrible you feel. And so I got into the process of just walking, doing daily walks all the time. And part of those walks, and then after cancer treatment, I maintained it. And so I noticed as I was walking, just rocks, which sounds silly, but rocks along the road that were under snow, under dirt, forgotten. But interestingly, when you see, if a stream of light comes down on a rock and shines it in a certain way, it's actually quite beautiful. And if you get a collection of those rocks, it's stunning. And there you see that there's life in rocks, which sounds completely insane. But at the same time, I was, involved with the Wildfire magazine and having my poem published and doing live readings and being with this community of young women who were all affected with cancer. And I guess just the concept of resilience sort of popped in my head, and what does that mean? And we're all, resilient in our own ways and every day in how we live our lives. But I just kind of went back to the rocks and what rocks, commonly, symbolize resilience. And so I started this, I'm going to photograph these rocks. And so I took all these pictures and just talk, with the under that theme of resilience. And the Art Gallery of Ontario had a Portraits of Resilience exhibit that they were, soliciting artwork for. And so I submitted one of my photos and it was accepted in. So it was part of that, I guess, that exhibit all summer. And so that was really cool. Like I never expected, that my thought about rocks would, turn into a part of an exhibit at the AGO. So that was pretty cool.
And it was with photography and not paint. That's a little different too, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was nice because it felt very familiar, and it was nice to be able to do. Um, it's a different kind of manipulating, like you physically place, the composition. You're touching it in your hands in a different way, and you're working with a machine now, and adjusting and for light and those kinds of things, which is, it's not your hand. There's something between you and the subject matter now.
Let's see. I'm going to see over check the chat here. Hello, Leo Lynx and Tiger. Welcome in. I do believe you're new, so glad you are here. Yes, these people. Yeah, we always have great questions. I like to think we always ask great questions. Yeah. Now, were you ever? You mentioned you were with a bunch of women that that were also going through that journey with you. Did you ever lose anybody of your group? And did you ever how did it affect you as an artist? Did you ever write or did you ever like draw anything or paint anything afterwards? And to
Yeah,
express your
it's
loss?
yeah, it's definitely we did very sadly lose a number of young women from that group. I also had my brother-in-law who lost two of his sisters very close together to cancer. So and a good friend, definitely have experienced loss from cancer. And what is strange when you get through cancer is when you look at those who you've lost, there you definitely have a sense of, I guess, survivor's guilt in a way, because you wonder why are you here, and those people are not. And so it affects you, and it's one of those things that, as a cancer survivor, for lack of a better way of saying it, that you managing that every day. And I definitely feel that that's a part of my process. I also had a good friend at that time who chose to die with assistance or by assistance, not because of cancer, but because of other ailments. And it was very strange. He came into my life through Byron, and it was, he just thought that we would have a lot to talk about, because I didn't know him beforehand. And it was one of those things where he was ready to give up his life and I was fighting with everything I had to hang on to it, and that dynamic of the two of us together. And so I've processing his death was very challenging, and I've done a lot of writing about that. And so that was my way of dealing with that and trying to figure out, why am I still here? I mean, we could all say that, every day of our lives, any one of us, but I think when it's you're so blatantly hit with it, that trauma, and seeing it, it just, you become very aware that you're still here, and what that means.
I'm going to let you know. I don't know if I don't think I told you this, but I'll let you know. The reason I'm asking those questions is because I too, like I said, it's a friend, and I do say it in the very loosest term. So I lost my wife 10 years ago to uterine cancer.
Okay, so sorry.
Yeah, it was misdiagnosed, and
Mm.
it took 2.5 years. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. I can't step in your feet. I never will, never can. And then that's something. Do people ever come up to you? And I'm gonna get back to the painting because I have so many questions. Um, do you ever find people come up to you and they always want to know what to do when they have it? Because they know you do. You've had it, and they're like, "What do I do? What's gonna happen?"
Absolutely. There's, you can't, um express the fear that goes through your mind when you hear those words. And I think in particular too, having children, I think that for me was my biggest fear. It wasn't necessarily fear for myself. It was fear of not being there for my girls. But knowing that, and at the end of the day, you can have all the support in the world, but when you're lying in bed at night, you are alone. And it's, that fear is overwhelming. And so absolutely, I've had people that I don't know reach out and ask questions, and I'm more than happy, because I know how it feels, and I needed those questions answered too. And when I had those answers, because with cancer, you don't get a lot of answers. You find that out. Doctors are doing their best, but they don't know a lot of the answers a lot of the time. So if you can, it's little things, if you can get that inside scoop, it's life changing.
Andre has a question. It says, question for Maureen. Has she ever regretted releasing any art or writing, or second guessed herself before finishing the work?
Oh, yes.
I think that happens a lot with painters. Yeah. What happens when you're so let's go, let's walk this for the a question that I'm going to ask you. I'm sure it's probably the first question you always get when you're, as far as being interviewed for painting, is what is abstraction art?
Sorry, what is
abstract art?
Oh, abstract art. Honestly, abstract art is, it doesn't negate sort of the elements and the characteristics of art. It's basically just sort of bending those rules, and it really is about opening yourself up and seeing where a painting will take you. And so, there's different kinds of abstraction and different, I guess maybe genres of abstraction. But for me, it's a matter of, there's no restrictions, there's no rules, in terms of how you want to interpret something or express yourself. And so that's kind of what I really like about it. I love all types of art, and I'm a fan of all types of art, but with the abstract, I don't know, it just feels very natural. And I think because it comes from such an emotional place, that it allows those lines to be bent. It's very fluid, and you can kind of move in and out of different genres. You can bring in film, you can bring in literature, you can bring in fashion, you name it. You can cross those boundaries with abstract.
So why abstract for you?
I think just for that reason, I've so many interests, and I'm influenced by so many different styles: photography, anthropology, that background, all the different types of art, dance, film, lighting. All of those things play a huge part in how I create. And so abstract just, I think, allows me to blend all of those different styles together.
So how, like I was asking you before about your process, but I'm going to go back to that because, like I said, if you do you ever have, set concrete plans? So let's say that you walk inside your studio, like we're sitting, we're a fly on the wall, we're watching you. So tell us about when you walk inside your studio with the intent to paint. What's the process? What does Maureen do to get her there to paint?
Well, usually, I'll have thought about sort of what it is I'm attempting to convey with the painting. So I have a general sense, and based on that, I'll probably have a general sense of colors. So I'll just start basically with sort of applying like a wash on the canvas. And for me, it's a very cathartic process where it's about building layers, taking away layers, and sort of starting with that, like stripping down of everything. We just start with the bare minimum, and then building on top of that. So I could put music on. Sometimes I paint in silence. A lot of times I've got the music on, and the music might take over, and that's kind of influencing me for that, amount of time that I'm painting. but a lot of staring, a lot of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I mean, especially the way when you hit it, when you're standing there and you're drawing and you're painting, and I'm just wondering how you're sitting there and you're so intent on that stroke right there, adding the colors, shaping the paint, because that's really something too. I noticed in your painting too is how much you apply to every stroke, because it itself helps shape the painting. I mean, some areas of the drawing will be flat, and then some you'll see the ridges and the crests of where you laid on extra thick paint, because that's how you saw it. It just fascinates me, like how when how you do that. How do you look at it and look at it and go like, this is amazing. I'm proud of this. This is
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, I
Or you
think
look at it and
there's
sit there and say,
definitely a lot of intention there. I'm not really somebody that sort of paints with like, complete abandonment at all. I definitely have intention with with the strokes that I make, or the marks that I make on the canvas. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of it, like I said, is emotionally, based, and maybe something that I read intrigued me. There's so many different facets to it, so that's what's kind of neat too, is a lot of times I don't really know, but it's a very calm approach, I would say that, and as you had pointed out, I'm very much partnered with the canvas. I'm very close to
uh,
the canvas.
let
I
me ask
don't
you,
sit very
let me
often.
ask
I'm usually standing when I'm painting, and I have sort of my organized mess that I know where everything is, and where I need, what colors I need, and my tools and that kind of thing.
have I know it's going to sound like a strange question, but I think I already know the answer to this. Do you ever put your teardrops in your painting?
Do I what? Sorry?
Do you put when you draw, when you paint and you get emotional and you're into the
Oh,
moment?
teardrops.
Yeah. Do you
Oh,
ever find yourself
that
putting them?
I've definitely had tears shed through painting. Absolutely, yes.
You ever
I
put them in?
don't tend to cry a lot in general, but the few that I have been associated with art. Yes,
Have you literally put a teardrop in your drawing, in your painting?
I do have one painting in particular that does. Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I know it's a weird question, but I
No,
just
not at all.
I sensed it. I'm just thinking, you put that much heart and soul into it. Why not tears? It makes
Yeah.
sense. It makes sense to me.
But
I mean,
the
that's
painting that,
that's
as I say,
beautiful.
this one particular painting though is a painting that is not for sale. It's for my daughters.
Wow, that's beautiful. Um, yeah, you now let me ask you a question. So I'm asking the questions all crazy, but what's it like when you go to an art gallery and you go watch an exhibit? What goes through your mind, because you are an artist. We look at it as it's two ways of looking at it. You're looking at it through a critical eye, and we're looking at it like, that's amazing, but is it? Again, it's subjective, but how do you approach when you go to a gallery or
I
to
think
a
the same way. I think I'm just, giddy when I walk into a gallery and amazed. I definitely have opinions of what I like and don't like, but I think in general it's a very exciting experience, and I think I go in there as a student. I don't think it's probably any much different. I might look at things differently in terms of studying it for my own knowledge and growth and what I can apply to my painting process. But for me, it's just a really fun, exciting experience.
what are some of your peers that you appreciate some of their work? Are there anybody right now that's in Canada that you know of that are doing anything exciting like you're doing? Is there
Oh my
anybody
goodness.
is there anybody let's put it this way, if there's four other people that you could share a showing with, what
Oh
four
my
are they,
goodness.
and what mediums do they do?
Oh boy. I don't know now. I'm really bad at that. I would say, oh gosh, in Canada. Well, I'd feel bad calling. saying some people and not others? I don't know if I can answer that question.
That's a tough one.
It is tough.
But I think everybody has, they all, among their own peers. I think there's always some that have, you always have a little bit more, favorites, because, or you admire them or you respect them. You respect everybody, but there's some that, that move you and inspire you, like I'm inspired by Maureen's painting. I mean, the way she blends her colors together. I'm inspired by that. Maybe I'm not inspired by Joe over here, but I'm inspired by you. Even though Joe's a fine artist, but still I'm not like inspired by him as much
Right,
as I am with you. So that's the type of question I'm asking. It's like if you could if you could have an opening, if you could share a gallery opening,
right.
which four, I mean, or which four would you like to, or better yet, I'll take the pressure off you. I'll take the pressure off you. You're booking the gallery, you're booking the showing. You're not showing with them, but you're picking them. Which
Right.
four would you pick?
Um, there's an artist in Toronto, his name is David Theron, that I find really intriguing. I first met David, we were both in 2018, we were both accepted into the Get Noticed exhibit that took place at the Redhead Art Gallery in Toronto. And that was kind of my first foray into like the Toronto art scene and all of these emerging artists. And he's got some really fantastic work, and so I would say that, and he's right now he's doing a lot of on Instagram and on TikTok, a lot of like little snippets of just little rants of things to consider, and in the art process and the artist process, and so I think he's really neat and has lots of really cool things to say. So that would be one in particular. I'm just trying to think if anyone else. I'm pretty inward, I have to say, when it comes to um, being inspired by others in terms of like specifically in that sense. I'm just trying, yeah, like that. Kim Lee Ho is another one. She's in Toronto. She's very multi-talented, touching on a lot of different disciplines. Um, so she would be somebody. I think that's. I'm sure there's more. I'm just blanking on names right now, but there's definitely so much talent out there. Canada is ridiculous.
It is
Um, you know,
Canada. You guys have amazing people. I mean, seriously, for the I guess the population, we have 340 million people, and you got what, like 32, but you got
36
so
or something like that. Yeah,
36,
yeah,
but you
it's
have
pretty
so much
amazing.
talent.
And a grand expanse, and what's kind of I find really cool about art in Canada is that, it can be very regionally influenced. So you have, out west and you have out east, and the difference, it's like the cultures and people, there's such an expanse, which is really amazing.
You touched upon the gentleman. You mentioned that his TikTok and his Instagram, but social media is not it's not very artist friendly, is it?
No, it's difficult, right? Because art is such a it's 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 something that you really need to see in person and connect with. And so it can be very difficult when all you have is a picture, and how do you show all the detail and that sort of the energy that that painting gives through photography, through a photo. And it's a lot of work, and overwhelming for a lot of artists, and it's time consuming. So you're spending time trying to keep up to date on Instagram, because it does have its benefits, but at the same time you want to be spending that time in the studio creating. So it's definitely a very challenging platform for sure.
Well, I was thinking about, I've had some other artists come on here, and one of the things they mentioned to me a lot is the theft. The theft. Um, they put their paintings out there on online, and or the concepts or what have you, and then people will come by there and steal the pictures, and or if they're making like ceramics or whatnot. Let's say you have an original ceramic idea, they'll take the picture of it and then make it their own and then sell it, even though it's yours.
Yeah.
Art theft is art theft is a now that happens. Is that mostly just a online phenomenon, or have you ever heard of that? Um, have you ever heard of that in the artist world, in the art world?
I
And I
haven't.
don't know how anybody could steal an abstractionist artist because
Um, I
no
don't know if anything really in recent years in the art world in that sense, but definitely online. I've heard and seen a lot of artists that have faced that where they've, you know, um, they'll see advertisements somewhere and it's, using the backdrop of the advertisement is their artwork, or maybe there's even a well-known brand that's selling something that looks very similar to something that they've done. So I've definitely have been exposed to that. But yeah, and it's like anything now with these platforms where things go out and we have we release things and we have no idea where they end up, and how do you control that? And I think one thing that's nice about the art community is that we are looking out for each other, and we do flag these types of things when they come along, so that we can hopefully try to mitigate the damage as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's just got to be totally frustrating, to have to worry about that. You work hard to create, and then someone feels like they just don't need to work as hard, and they just want to take. Um, but what was it like for you the first time you sold one of your paintings? What kind of emotions were going through you the first time that you sold a piece?
Yeah, I mean it really is quite overwhelming because you put so much of your heart and soul into something, and like I said before, you lay it all out there. It's a risk, and you're very vulnerable, and so when somebody embraces that and they find inspiration through it and a love for it, I mean there's no words to explain how amazing that feels, and it is very emotional. I mean, it's emotional every time. Like I'm just so overwhelmed anytime there's somebody shows interest in my work.
Uh, is Would your husband like to come on now and say hello?
I know
Because I've been saving one
here
question.
he is. That was good timing. He
Oh,
literally just walked through the door.
well, there you go. That's right.
Coming in. He's coming in. There he is. Nope.
Hi, Byron. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for
Good.
having me.
Good. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. Well, I have a question for you. It's probably the last question you expect from my first question for the both of you. But so, how do you know Karen Clich?
Well, being an actor, and it's a small, tight-knit community here in Ottawa. Karen's one of the top actors in Canada, to be honest, and
Yeah.
we're lucky enough to have her here in Ottawa. And over the past couple of years, we've become pretty close friends, and so mutual circles kind of
I
combine
think too,
and
at
meet up.
one point, Byron had a big role, and a lot of times for these bigger roles, when you have something where you're up for something, a leading role, and Karen coaches acting, as you know, and so I think her name was passed on to you. He did his audition, and then he had Karen kind of look at it and provide feedback, and I think that's kind of how you first
Yeah,
officially met.
she's a coach and a mentor, and through all that, doing some scene work together, we've become pretty fast friends. So that's our kind of story.
I love her so much. She's
Yeah,
so
she's
so
a
lot of fun.
bolt of lightning for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Very, very. In fact, actually, to tell you the truth, I was actually going to try to surprise you guys because I asked her, "Says you want to come up and be my surprise co-host?"
Oh,
But she's actually shooting tonight. She's actually shooting a cooking show.
yes.
Yeah, she's
So
got a Canadian chefs that she's filming with, or shooting them in a kitchen, doing a pretty neat show.
yeah. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Byron, let's talk to you for a little bit. So you are an actor,
Yeah.
and you like doing comedy.
Sure do.
Do you see yourself as an actor first or a comedian first?
Well, it's funny because comedy's in my blood. My grandmother and my dad are both extremely witty and quick with a comeback and really lighthearted and see a lot of funny and everything. So I think I'm a comedian first and a lover of all things funny first, because I find a lot of things funny, and an actor second, I think. But they go hand in hand, I find, as well. Being light on your feet and quick to respond to things helps you be a much more stable and grounded actor.
I was gonna say too, sorry, I think too, like, it's just what he's naturally, like, you're just so comfortable with it, and it's just something that just so naturally pours out of him, like, you don't have to think about, it's just, I don't, it's just an intuitive thing. It's organic in where, the humor is always there, and Byron can make anything funny, which, we've needed in recent years, has been great. But yeah, like, I think the your comedic ability and timing was an amazing framework from which to build on the acting.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
So what led you? Was that something you wanted to act for a long time, right? And so you finally got encouraged to do so. What was it like? Did you go to classes for that first, or did you just go straight to a set? I mean, how, or did you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Luckily, I was advised to do some training, which really is the foundation for how you present yourself, how you remember lines, learning to understand nuance. And I think having that training really was a great foundation for me, and a wise choice to start off doing that versus trying to act for film and TV without any real training. So getting signed with an agent, and then getting some real solid training with a local studio here. And Karen's one of the new mentors and teachers there now as well. Was how I got started. But it was one of those life choice things where you always want to, but then you realize life's pretty short. When am I going to do it? Because you put it off and you put it off and you realize I can't keep putting this thing off. I really need to take this up and do it. Now's the time. So I had the option and the opportunity, and decided to just kind of jump with both feet in and really dig in and do it.
So it must be very helpful to have Maureen there to help you to run lines. I know there's some couples that do that quite a bit. It is very beneficial.
Sure. Absolutely, she's my number one fan and my number one reader and my go-to scene partner. So it helps to have someone who's got the timing, and you can when you read a script, you get it and you look at it and go, how are you going to break it down? And then we really feed off each other on how you see the scene playing out, how you see the character playing out, how you decipher your spacing in terms of how you're going to do things, where you might look. So there's a lot of little nuances there that aren't written on the page, but you need to involve, so that's exciting for the watcher to look at it and go, oh, okay, I didn't see that coming. That was really interesting, or that was a different take on it. So that's what this one right here brings to it for sure for me, and challenges me too. Going, that doesn't seem right. Yeah, maybe too much.
Sometimes it's too much.
Yeah, a lot.
Well, you know what though? I mean, you only want the best. So, and
right.
And there's a lot of competition out there. And so, sometimes it's good to have that extra push, that extra drive, because you're competing for roles with a lot of other people.
Exactly.
If you give a substandard self tape, it can hurt. So having someone there, helping you, elevate your game up, getting the best out of you, it's a blessing, and not very many actors have that.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. And fortunate enough to do what's called self-taping now, where you film at home and you can look at the final product, whereas going to the studio and standing in front of a bunch of people and getting one shot at it and realizing that probably wasn't very good, whereas you get to do multiple takes at home, and you're a little bit more comfort when you're doing it at home. And having this one is the ace in the hole for me, for sure.
For sure. Now, how do you like when Maureen goes inside of her studio to paint? How do you do you ever approach her, like, once the door shuts? Is this something that you just know that you just don't bother her until she comes back out?
Yeah. It's funny because I get an audition and it's due in a day or two, or generally it's doing 24 to 48 hours. So I try to give her as much heads up if she's in the zone, if she's in what I call the zone of painting, and we try to plan out for when we're going to do it so that I can learn my lines, figure out some spacing within the scene, the lighting, and what I'm going to say, and just prep a bunch. And then Maureen has time to prepare for getting out of the zone, being interrupted, and dealing with me.
Yeah, and I'm very cautious too. Like, he has to feed off my energy, so I like to prepare as if I'm actually, as well auditioning, because it is in his best interest. Like you had said, that we're, setting that tone and feeding off of each other to get the best out of Byron creatively as possible.
So how did you did you got into comedy? I mean, why comedy? I mean, why was that just something you were you just a natural, and did your comic sense, did that help you when you were a caregiver? Was your comedic sense, was that still there during that time, or did you find yourself just being like, holy shit?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's always been part of who I am. It's I come from a family and an area where I grew up with a lot of quick-witted people, and so you had to stand on your toes and be able to dish and take the ribbing as well. And my grandmother, being the sharp wit that she was a great teacher, and my dad is the same. And all my friends are very quick-witted, very sharp. And so, but humor is one of those things for me that's always been a tool that binds groups together, brings family together, helps heal mentally and physically. And so through life, as we know, it's not been easy in the past couple of years, and even the few years before that for us as a family. Humor was always there to lift us up when we felt like we couldn't put one foot in front of the other. So for me, humor has always been at the center of who I am. I'm very lighthearted. I see humor in a lot of funny things. I act like an idiot daily, which is good for me and good for the kids. But it's really at the center of who I am as a person. And I think that it always will be. I hope it always is. And it's how we kind of met as well, and stayed together all these years as well. So.
How did you two meet anyway?
Oh my goodness. So one of my best friends was camping, and Byron's tent was beside them. And of course, Byron had everybody at the campground in stitches laughing, and my friend being his biggest fan at that time. So she had said to Byron, "I have the perfect girl for you and my friend Mo." And so after that weekend, she came home and she called me and she said she had met this really funny guy. I was going to really like him. And I was like, okay, sure. Didn't really think much of it. And then we both played beach volleyball. And there was a beach volleyball tournament a few weeks later. And my friend and I were playing in it, and Byron happened to be playing as well. And so we met through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, beach volleyball is starting to gain popularity down here.
Yes.
Yeah, they're playing it collegiately now.
Amazing.
So you guys met at a tournament, and then how many kids you guys have? You mentioned children. How many kids?
Two girls.
Two girls.
Yeah.
And are they also very artistic? Do they, are they?
They're more artistic than we are, sadly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're
kind of
amazing. Yeah, they're phenomenal. And our oldest daughter, she's 13. She actually goes to an art school, and she acts as well. So she's definitely doing that. And then our younger daughter is a dancer and just a creative spirit at heart. Yeah.
Yeah, guys. How about you, Byron? Was your family always creative as well? Was there any artists in your bloodline? Any
Not in the traditional sense, but on my mom's side, they're extremely crafty. Having grown up on the farm, you kind of created your own fun, you created your own entertainment. Jokes and storytelling was a big part of it. But my aunts are all extremely crafty ladies. One of my aunts is a jewelry maker. Another one is a phenomenal self-taught painter. My mom makes all kinds of Victorian era lace-based crafts that are extremely phenomenal and hard to come by now. She doesn't make them much anymore, but on that side, extremely, extremely talented. My grandfather on my dad's side was a phenomenal engineer and creative in that sort of physical application sense of things, and he could make anything into an engine. He could weld anything together. He knew principles that weren't taught to him, which is kind of amazing as well. So the creative spirit is alive and well, and my sister's a phenomenal writer. So the creative spirit is in all of us for sure.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. So what's next for you? What's next for you two in the future? I mean, do you have anything as far as filming projects going on, Byron? And do you have anything gallery-wise or showing-wise, Maureen?
Yeah, so my dad is just retired from a volunteer fire department in a small community. And in order to honor him, his years of service, he retired at 80 years of age from the volunteer fire department. And in small communities across Canada, they don't just put out fires, they help on roadside issues. They help with farms where there's bad accidents. They volunteer their hours to raise a lot of money for multiple sclerosis. And so I took some photos of the fire department, and it got a lot of notoriety. And in talking with the MS Society of Canada, they'd like to fund me to travel across Canada to create a photo book, and we're going to give half the proceeds to charity. So that's kind of in the works now. COVID really didn't do us any favors yet again, but we're going to pick that project up again, and then continue with the acting. And I've been doing a lot more, getting back to my roots in photography as well. So that's on the immediate agenda for me. And then acting is always, it's cyclical. It's one of those things where you continue to learn at your craft. You're never quite a master, as it were, and continue to plug away at that and have fun. And I'm getting lots of auditions and on set lots, and there's travel involved in that. And so that's it from my perspective. And Maureen's obviously gaining crazy notoriety and being super busy in the studio. So you can.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
I
yeah.
plan to. I have a few things that I'm still waiting to hear back on, so I can't really chat about just yet. But I still, working on that screenplay, the stories, still writing, producing. I'm really just open to opportunities, and so that's kind of where I just sort of leave that out there, and I'll continue to learn and grow and just keep painting and sort of manifesting that creativity in all aspects of my work.
Will you stay in Ottawa? I mean, if either one of you, let's say that all of a sudden tomorrow you're just, world famous, would you stay in Ottawa, or would you move somewhere? Would you move to Toronto or Montreal, or would you stay right where you're at?
I think we'll go where the wind blows.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's our daughter came very close to getting a lead in a Netflix series, and so that would have meant a move to Toronto for several months, and so we would have done that, picked up sticks and stayed in an apartment somewhere in Toronto while she was busy acting. And if that happens with me, then we'll do the same, and or I'll go on my own and come back on weekends or whatever the case may be. I think it's one of those moving targets, and it's a bit of a fluid process where things come and go, and you might go where the wind blows as it comes up. And that's the beauty about acting, is it's really, don't get your roots too settled in some cases, because their projects are all over the world, really, not just locally, for sure.
Is that the same for a painter, though? I mean, do you have to have a little deeper roots, though, as a painter, or can you be flexible as well?
I think I could be flexible. I think, decisions that we make, potential decisions in terms of moving or what have you, really would revolve around our girls and what's best for them, I think, at the end of the day. I think Byron and I are pretty versatile and pretty easygoing in that sense. So, we would adapt to whatever situation we needed to do that would make most sense, I think, for our girls.
Yeah, you two guys are definitely you guys are definitely a power couple, that's for sure. You guys overcome so much. I'm so glad for that. I mean, obviously, anytime anybody kicks cancer's ass as a friend of mine for life. Um, I want to thank you both for coming out and sharing this time with us. I appreciate it so much. I hopefully we can come back and do this again sometime next year.
Oh my
When
goodness, absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us and
Yeah.
giving Maureen and myself the chance to meet you and chat and get our message out there.
Oh yeah, yeah, you definitely are two of the most brightest people I've talked to since I've been doing this. Sensational, and I really enjoyed talking. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I appreciate it so much. I want to thank you to my chat. Thank you for hanging out and asking some awesome questions yourselves. Mariska, it was awesome to see you. We have to connect. I have not seen this young lady in almost 2 years.
That's
She just popped
amazing.
up. Yeah, it's and she's in the United States now. That's awesome. Um, well, tomorrow night we'll be back with the Bud Files. This is a family that goes around in the Dakotas and they investigate old ghost towns and
That's
do
cool.
paranormal investigations. And they do it all as a family, and they look, and it's really fun to watch. And they'll be here with us tomorrow night at 8. And then, of course, Thursday we'll see the guy with the best channel name on YouTube. That's our friend Michael, who runs the Heroic Waffles YouTube channel. Now say that 3 times fast. Uh, yeah, it's the cutest name ever. It's like the first time I saw that, I'm like, I don't know this guy at all, but I'm just gonna friend him anyway. I'm gonna follow him anyway because his channel's name is so kick ass.
That's
Heroic
amazing.
Waffles. But he'll be here on Thursday at 8 o'clock. Thanks again for coming out, and we will see you tomorrow. Hopefully, you two stay right where you're at, and we're gonna be out of here. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on.